So the next speaker will be T.K.Kang. He has a very interesting story. He's a clinical psychologist before, so he worked with a lot of patients, and they were under a lot of pain. And so he wondered, how can I use technology to smooth the pain of my patients? So he started from there into education. He saw that, like, after that was projects, and he thought, oh, so the power of technology. How can I use that to empower the children that were disabled? And how can I use technology to support their parents in Asia? So now he's been working on another project related to education and children. It's called One Laptop per Child in last developed areas in Asia. So we'll have him today to talk about the recent stories of his initiative. So let's welcome T.K.Kang. Here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Well, I'm glad to be here. This is the second time since I've been here. Let me begin by just, I'd like to get an indication of, do we know what a psychologist does? Can you have a raise of hand? Right, psychology, so not many, right? So I need to have some terminology. Basically, I'm a psychologist, and I'm trained as a psychologist. I did my degree in psychology, which is basically the study of human behavior, right? So in psychology, that's what we call applied psychology, where we use what we know in psychology to help people in distress. So you could have depression, you could have anxiety, or you could going through a difficult time in your life, and we do not prescribe drug. We use what we call talk therapy to help you, okay? So that's one terminology that I can, right? And OLPC, can I have a show of hand? How many of you know what OLPC is? Okay, so not many. So LPC is acronym for One Laptop per Child, okay? One laptop per child. And I'm a OLPC Asia volunteer. I'm not linked to OLPC in America. We are just volunteers who feel the passion for doing something in education, okay? So what I want to do, because what you have here is that you have the chain of team from inspiration, passion, and synergy. Now we are getting into the synergy part. Before I go into that, I want to ask one question. How many of you here are father? Can you raise your hand? Okay, only a few. So happy Father's Day, right? Give a clap to them. Happy Father's Day. Now, for those who are mothers or for those who have children, you understand the importance of what we call learning, right? Learning is so very important, right? And the title that I have was Learning to Change the World, because you can see that your kid is actually growing very fast and learning informally. Well, maybe I'll just throw a joke, you know. I don't think we get sex education. We feel through, we do it because somehow there's some instinct in us that we actually learn it, and we don't get it right the first time, right? So what I want to do now, as I say, is to try to bring a story, my personal story, where I can bring out the key, what we call synergy. Because synergy, basically, you have 1 plus 2, and it may not be 2. 1 plus 1 may not be 2. There's something more than that, right? And after that, I would like to bring you to that I'm affected by the passion of others. I'm affected by the passion of the people from MIT, because Tom mentioned about MIT may not be right, but it's very, very relevant to this talk, because MIT, apart from providing the technology, it has a very long history of good pedagogy of education. So their passion has ignited me, and the passions of thousands of volunteers. In fact, for some of you who are not aware, the laptop that I have here is my laptop. Okay, is thousands of hours by brilliant people to make it into reality. Okay, so not you have actually used it, seen it, so I'll just pass it around, and you can play around with it, but do pass it around. Okay, so you get a feel. And the thirdly, I want to talk about inspiration, because after talking about passions, I want you to think about what makers can actually do. How can you be inspired by the passions of others so that you can actually learn to change the world, okay? So, we're going back to 1974. I'm a maker. You can see the red boat there is a kayak. It's a second iteration. I made one which is basically canvas with a wooden frame, but once it's launched, it just sank. This is the second iteration, right? And you can see it's still hanging in my house in Malaysia. It's still there. And when the time comes, when there's global warming, when the sea level rise, I think I will take it out for use. And I was around, I think, 14 to 15, and it just took me 2 to 3 weeks after school coming back. The frame of the boat is made from the bed of my grandmother. When she passed away, we used that to make it into a frame. And there's so much learning involved in just making a boat. Right? And then I have to understand that, well, how can I get sealant to seal the boat? I have to go to funeral shops where they seal coffins to get sealant from them. So it's all a lot of learning. And as I grow up, as I say, I was involved in what we call, as I say, as a psychologist. And the personal synergy comes from trying to put together a few things to see whether I could help people. Okay? When I say help people, I'm talking about people who are in distress. Now, I have a picture of a young boy there, you know. Well, at the bottom I mentioned about disabled person having more life strengths. Now, all of us, 1 in 4 of us, would experience some kind of mental health problems. It could be early, it could be late, it could be maybe when we're older, but we would be experiencing some kind of mental health problems. And you know why the psychology of making is so important? Because the making lets you have your system, take it out. It gives you an opportunity to get into a flow of doing things. And after doing it, you feel so comfortable, you feel nice about it. But anyway, but for many, especially in my past, I have to work with people with very severe disability. People who have just head movement, people who has, as I say, on a wheelchair, and they just do not have an opportunity to do things that we do. So in 1990, I think we already have the Apple II, and I think we have the a PC. And naturally, I discovered that computer opens another world of possibility, right? I mean, Tom, you did mention about bringing to the whole past. But the fact that you have a computer, it helps you do things differently. Now, in the whole Makers Faire, we assume that everybody would have a computer. You have all the gadgets, but you still need the computer for your programming, right? You said I can do it on a smartphone. How many of you actually program your stuff with a smartphone? Or how many of you actually program your things in tablet? Not many, right? So the computer would still be here for some time. But the key thing is that the digital world opens up a new possibility. And I was very lucky in the sense that one of my clients was very severely disabled, which have the same illness as Stephen Hawking. And I don't know whether you're aware that Stephen Hawking has a system, which is basically, it used to be, I think, a wing that he actually sort of like if you could actually control a muscle, you can have an on-off system, right? So 0 and 1. So with that, somebody wrote a brilliant software. You can actually have what we call letter scanning, and from letter scanning, you can, let's say, if you want to have word buy, when it goes to B, you just twitch your muscle or blink your eye, and then the word, anything related to B, boy, bring, all will be, there will be prediction involved. So with that, he was able to type, he was able to communicate, and he was able to do many, many things, right? So the use of assistive technology was something that gave me and my client a lot of power. And that's where I have to fight. I have to explain to my boss that a person with disability needs to have a computer. And I always remember that he told me, my staff do not have a computer. Why would a person with disability need a computer? Right? So after you have a computer, you still need a lot of personalization. You need to make sure that it is accessible. Right? Today we have somebody, Intel, talking about creating a braille machine from a young boy, using his ability to hack to create a braille machine with Edison. So we have to have different input systems. So what you actually see in today's technology that we have, a lot of it grew up from the technology that was meant to make life easier for people with disability. Right? Speech input, speech recognition, right? Word prediction. A lot of them were from work with disability. And the third part was remote networking. I mean, there was the BBS bulletin board system was my time. I create server where they can dial in from the telephone, and when they are out in the hospital, they can still communicate and network with patients and clients who are still in the hospital. So today we have the internet, we don't worry about communication, but we are talking about 1989 to 1995. And 1995 is where the internet starts to pick up. Okay? So what happened in 2008? 2008 is where I changed my career and was looking for something new to do. And I found out that there was such a thing as OLPC. And the book that we have that Learn to Change the World, if you are an entrepreneur, you should actually get this book and read. Because before Kickstarter, OLPC was funded by what we call the Give One, Get One project, where they do not have money to produce the computer. The only way they can get money is to get ordinary people to buy one and donate one. So it was very early days of doing it. Okay? So I became OLPP volunteers. And what we have, as I say, this is the passion. The passion from the volunteers, and the passion from people who were trying to solve a very, very difficult problem. How can you give a 6-year-old child who lives in very, very difficult circumstances, it could be in the jungle, it could be in the Sahara Desert, it could be out in the mountain, to have a laptop that they can own, which means that they can take it home and they can use it, and that can last for 5, 6, 7 years. So that is not easy. And all of you will say, well, what about power? How would they have power? Well, so one of the biggest problems that the designers have to think about is how to get the power to 2 watts. And they have done that. After 6, 7 years of playing around with things, changing different processes, they actually have done one. Okay? So this is the early prototype, and this is the actual one that you can actually see, which can people pass it around. Okay? Okay, so OLPC mission is basically to empower the world's poorest children through education. Through education. It's not about the laptop. The laptop is just a tool for the child to learn by themselves. And it has a few principles. Child ownership. What do you mean by child ownership? The kid should take it home. It should not be blocked in schools. It should be given to the kids, and this is his computer or her computer. Low ages, you're talking about 6 and above. And why low ages? Because by the time you're around 8, 9, 10, your mindset is already fixed. I mean, I was listening to some of the speakers here say that the problem with China is that, well, you have a lot of resources, but the issue is that you do not have a lot of people who are makers. And you do not become makers when you are 15 or 16. Well, some of you do. But if you start early, at 6 or 7, where they start making and they start playing with the computer and using it, then the probability of them become makers will be very high. So low ages. And what about saturation? Now, saturation is about if you have 200 children in that school, 200 children would be given 1 laptop. So that's why the mission and vision is 1 laptop per child. And then it talks about connection. It has to be connected to the internet, because if your laptop is connected to the internet, then the resources is available for the kids to learn by themselves. And then what we have is free and open source. So a lot of the principle that is mentioned there is very much what we are actually doing today. Okay? So as I was passing the laptop around, you know, when you talk about connectivity, there will be places in the world where there will be no internet. So how can I bring resources like Khan Academy, some of the resources, the library that we have, into offline mode? So what I have is just one of the computers can just plug in this for the wireless AP, and then load the software as a school server, and I can put in a 1 TB resources, and you can serve your community without internet access, but you have what we call offline mode. And this is actually happening now. You see a lot of people, NGO, going to all over the places using this to provide resources. Okay? So what about my involvement? Okay, so in fact, China, Sichuan was the first place that received the 1 laptop per child, and it's related to earthquake. And there is a bit of a, each time when we mention about deployment, earthquake somewhere, or have deployed, earthquake would happen. So I recently deployed in Malaysia, and Malaysia had an earthquake. When we deployed in Bhutan, there was an earthquake in Bhutan. So we are a bit, a bit worried also. Right. So can we have the video just to show you some of the places where, and look at the joy in the children. This is in Sichuan, okay? This is in Sichuan. And you can see we have volunteers and we have children there, and this is their classroom or computer lab. Can we play that? Yep. This is in 2008. It's the second time that we went up. This is a memory program. We actually have took Spain, and it's like, Scratch. You can see Scratch here. So whatever you want, Arduino, Lego, WeDo, all can be linked to that laptop for the children to use. Right? So this after an hour or so, you can see they're so happy that they can actually use, right? So you can, the faces are written in the smile. This one is in Bhutan. We had 250, and this one is made by a teacher, and asked me, can you report back what's actually happened? So he did a little bit of so it's a real far out place, very, very, very different. I was involved in looking at the server, right? So this is in 2013. This is a bit soft, but basically saying, what he could use the laptop for.
My favorite activity is to type. We learn to make different colors in it. We can make different sizes.
The next one is in Malaysia, Rome, Malaysia. We had a campfire. It was a Children's Day. And you can see Hari Kana Kana means Children's Day. So these are children who are indigenous of Malaysia. They live in the jungle. So they come to what we call a hostel to stay. And they are there. And it's very ideal because they are all living there together. So all of them would have one laptop, using the internet, playing different things. So this is in Rome, Malaysia. Then all this are given to them, donated. This is in urban Hong Kong. We have what we call ethnic minority children, and some of them do not have access to technology. So again, I managed to get sponsorship to have them use it. So again, you can see some are learning, some are doing it. So this is not one laptop per child, but at least you can see there's energy. They're talking, they're discussing, they're doing, right? And then the other dish, you see, lying down, right? So it's a different kind of learning. A different kind of learning whereby they actually just learn by doing and by experimentation. Okay. Okay. So now what we want is always that if you give a laptop to the child and leave it for a few months, what happened to it? It's something that we always want to know. A lot of parents want, or government officials, does it increase the grade? Do they spell better? And do they, you know? As far as I'm concerned, I want to look at the content. What do they actually do with it? So this is, say, given to the kid who live in the jungle. And then after a few months, when I look at what he has written, he actually wrote something. Now, she's literate because there are schools, but they have not access to technology. So she wrote something about, you know, very thank you to the teachers for helping them. You can see the joy when the laptop has a camera where they can actually take photos, right? So, and then we have this paint activity where the kid actually make a description, bulan gelap malam, this is a dark night. So you're actually documenting. This is not something that you tell the kid you have to do that. Somehow they did it by themselves. So in a few months' time, I'll go back again and look at how other kids are also learning. Okay? So it's 2015, and the laptop prototype was announced in 2015. So think about 2006, think about 2007. The laptop was already present. And it was even the days before the netbook. The history goes is that the netbook was the result of the one laptop per child. And the history says that one laptop per child did not want to produce the laptop. They want commercial organization produce in mass, and they can just do other things. But because no manufacturer wants to do it, because there's no money in it, that was in the past. But now, as I say, with the growth of tablet, with the growth of many other small computing devices, it has changed the landscape. But still, we need to think about how to move of it. Okay? So what we call inspiration for makers? Very, very important. Because you are the maker, you could be designing the next generation. So what we have is that quality, low-cost devices for poor children. Remember, quality is what is needed. You just do not produce a laptop that lasts for 6 months. When I have a laptop that has been used for 7 years, it's supposed to be end of life, and it's still running, and we are still deploying it. There are around maybe 2 million out in the world which are still running, right? So, and this is where people like David Lee comes in. We were discussing what could be the future, right? And you can think about that we have this, the modular concept of soul computer, putting parts together so they can actually make your own computer. And then we know that Kano, is also very successful. And then we have the most recent one with the OLPC Australia, where they have what we call Exo Infinity, trying to make it as modular as possible. Okay? So, some of you say, why not just go for tablet or go for smartphone? The user experience is very different. If you design a laptop that allows the kids to play, to physically use it, to physically take it out, like the laptop that we have, it could be taken out with one screwdriver. Okay? So, children's as mission. Now, OLPC has never wanted to get into the laptop business. And everybody says that you're stupid. You can make money from selling the actual laptop. But Negroprante always say that it's our mission. We see children as mission and not as market. But now, 10 years later, they have created the machine. The market is still there, but the market is shrinking because there are many, many other devices. But as far as I'm concerned, it's an opportunity for makers to think about how you can actually deploy and think about laptops as a market. Okay? The key is to, as you are making, you have to educate. It's good to make things, it's good to see the result of your work, but you have children observing, you have people there, all working together. And if you're willing to give some support and help, then you're actually doing them a favor in learning. Right? So this is the photograph of the Walter Bender, who is the Sugar Lab, the sugar interface developer. And this is like the two kids, not his kid. They were the Google 2014 winners, Google Code-In. So can you imagine? And one of them is from Uruguay. So what we have is that a new generation of kids who grew up with the laptop are actually now producing and actually getting into the software industry, right? And if we still do not move, we still do not give the right tools to them, the country will not be able to move ahead. And as I say, coding is very important. I see coding as coding to learn. A lot of people see it as learning to code, because the coding to learn is where you actually think you have critical thinking, you're able to debug, and you're able to understand what actually went wrong. Okay? So learning to change the world is where the future of makers. And you need a large number of people, and you need children. So wish you all of luck, and hopefully, as I say, that would inspire you to really think about what is next. Okay? Thank you very much. Right?